It's been 80 years since the United States dropped an atomic bomb codenamed Little Boy on the Japanese city of Hiroshima, killing an estimated 70,000 people instantly. The death and destruction caused by the 10,000-pound bomb was immediate, created a massive mushroom cloud that rose to more than 60,000 feet. Just 3 days later, the U.S. unleashed a second atomic bomb on Nagasaki, killing another 40,000 people instantaneously. By the end of 1945, it's estimated that up to 200,000 people had died as a result of the bombings, many of whom died in the days, weeks, and months that followed from burns and radiation exposure. Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945. Scholars debate whether the bombs were necessary to bring an end to the war. Today, Pew Research Center says 54% of Americans say they know little about the events surrounding the United States' use of atomic bombs near the end of World War II. Though nuclear weapons have not been used again in the 80 years since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, history can be cyclical. Survivors, scholars, and activists alike warn about the growing acceptance of military buildups and of using nuclear weapons for national security, especially in light of the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine and the conflicts in the Middle East. Not only is nuclear stockpiling globally dangerous, it's costly. According to the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, the 9 countries which possess nuclear weapons, China, France, Israel, India, North Korea, Pakistan, Russia, and the United Kingdom, and the United States, have spent more than $100 billion on nuclear weapons just in the last year. That's up 11% from 2023. The Up in Arms campaign is trying to bring attention to this. The group, led by Ben & Jerry's co-founder and anti-nuclear activist and philanthropist Ben Cohen, says that the U.S. nuclear arsenal has the explosive power of 50,000 Hiroshima bombs.
Here's one BB. That represents the nuclear bomb that we dropped on Hiroshima. Here's 50 BBs. That would be enough to blow up every major city on Earth. And now what I'd like to do is demonstrate the size of our current nuclear arsenal.
And the arsenal just keeps growing. Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill allocates an additional $157 billion in defense and national security spending on top of the $849 billion already allocated to the Department of Defense budget, $15 billion of which is to be used for new nuclear weapons and maintaining our nuclear capability. All right, it's a lot to unpack here, and I've got just the guy to do it. Ben Cohen joins me now. Ben, it is great to have you on the show. Thank you for being with us.
How you doing? Good to be here with you.
Thank you, sir. So part of this is that people are probably saying, why do we keep spending money on this thing? Because we've sort of got stuck. We're in a point of stasis where we've got to keep spending even if nothing changed. Even if nobody built another bomb, there's maintenance. The whole world is spending money on something that we're hoping is never going to be used and never used again. And that's, as we've seen in our last budget experiment, that's money that doesn't get spent on other things. You call it the American dream, but it's basic things like education, housing, health care. We cut everything, but we're not cutting this.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, what the people of America want is things that help them in their everyday lives. And we've been cutting the amount of money that we're spending on schools, health care, feeding people that don't have enough to eat, and for the purpose of overkill. You know, the overkill mentality goes throughout the Pentagon. It's nuclear weapons is kind of the easiest way to understand it, but it goes for the other weapon systems as well.
And that's, you know, you point out something. I follow economics, so I always try to say this when we're talking about budgets, because federal budgets don't interest people, generally speaking, except that they are the manifestation of a government's priorities, right? So when so much money goes into defense spending, ultimately, that's what you're saying as a country you prioritize. And I understand, we can get into this discussion, that the United States can't unilaterally decide that it's not going to have a strong military, but we're all doing the same thing. We're all catching up to each other and increasing our defense spending.
Well, I wouldn't say that we're all catching up to each other. I would say that the U.S. leads and drives the arms race, and those other countries are trying to catch up to us. I mean,
right.
the country that spends the next most on their military outside of us is China, who spends 1/3 of what we're spending. So, the way I look at it is economic violence, that by deciding not to put money into feeding kids here in the U.S. and feeding kids around the world, we're essentially condemning them to, death in terms of, there's 3 million kids around the world that are starving to death as we speak. That's how many a year are starving to death.
Right.
And then we've got our kids here in the U.S. that are hungry, don't have enough to eat. I trust, at least here in the U.S., they're not starving to death. But, malnutrition in the early years affects your mental and physical development for your entire life.
So you look at like USAID. We were paying 12 cents a day, I think, to stop kids in Africa from dying from HIV infection. 12 cents a day, right?
Right.
Gone.
And we're paying $3 billion a day for the Pentagon.
Yeah. So here's the question, and I had this conversation with Garrett Graff yesterday, who's written this book on the atomic bomb and the creation of it. There are a lot of countries now who have taken the view that, it's better if we just had an atomic bomb because people don't mess with you. It's this deterrent. We've got ourselves into this pickle. Ukraine had nuclear weapons and gave it up in exchange for guarantees that their territory would be protected, and it didn't happen. So now the takeaway for the world is that nobody honors their deals, so you need a nuclear weapon.
I think that's probably the way other countries around the world feel. But the purpose that we're told of our nuclear arsenal is deterrence. And how many nuclear bombs do you need to deter a country from attacking you? I mean, the equivalent of 50,000 Hiroshima bombs, that's not deterrence, that's delusion. That's just feeding money to the profiteers that are making money off all this stuff. And, it's time that we take America back. It's time that we say that, no, we're not going to be driven by the Pentagon. We're not going to, let's use our money for the things that people really want and need in their everyday lives to create a better life for them and their kids. When you talk about spending money on that stuff, what you hear from the government is, oh, yeah, I know we need that. We feel really bad, but we're out of money. We're in debt. And that's a lie. We've got all the money we need. And we, take 25% of the Pentagon budget, and we'd still have by far the biggest, most powerful military force in the world. And if we gave that money to things that people really need, we'd have a much more secure and happier population.
Is part of the problem that we've just taken it for granted that that's what the military costs and that's what has to happen, and we've got to fund it more, and it has just become self-fulfilling, a good lobbying effort by the people who make weaponry?
It's a great lobbying effort by the people who make weaponry. And on top of that, you have the revolving door that the people in the Pentagon, the people in uniform, the generals and the admirals, are supposed to be supervising the weapons manufacturers and to do stuff in the right way. So what they do is they're lax, they let them off the hook, and then when they retire, they get a great job at a really high rate of pay with those same weapons manufacturers.
All right. I'm back with the activist, philanthropist, and co-founder of Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream, Ben Cohen. Ben, we have a relatively low unemployment rate in the United States, and part of that is this dirty little secret that we have foundries and weapons manufacturers running 3 shifts. We're running our factories 24 hours a day because, as you alluded to, we're very involved in the wars around the world. They're buying our weaponry. When we give a country military aid, we call it military aid, but we're giving them money to buy our weapons to use in their wars.
Yep, that's correct.
And so what you're talking about, a reduction in our military spending, people will say, well, what's the offset to that? How do we offset the fact that we have an economy that runs like a war economy, and yet we're not at war?
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. We are always at war. We're always preparing for war, and we're stockpiling these weapons. It's an absurd thing to be doing if what you're trying to do is provide for the people who live in your country, provide for a better life for them. And the reality is that if we started putting some more money into education or into healthcare, we would create a whole lot more jobs than we create when we put money into weapons manufacturers, because weapons manufacturers are about profits. And the other point about giving money to weapons manufacturers is that it's not an investment; it's an expense. It doesn't help.
It's not capital. So yes, you're not growing